I'm Turk Strongman at Thuraim Kirama Chiraka. Thank you for selecting this video on the problem of being consistent and repetitive with a methodologically arranged and orderly sequence of self-mastery, mental discipline, personal involvement, self-training. Before continuing, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, pause the video right now and go ahead and do that. All right. Activate the notification bell feature while you're at it. Comment courteously below. Give the video a thumb up if you like it. Give it your other thumb up if you don't. Don't give it your middle finger. Share the joy of the channel with others. Now, listen. Let me start here with an analogy. I was once an industrial painter and commercial painter. Residential, commercial, and industrial, but largely, for a good while, it was strictly industrial. And then I went on to commercial, too. I worked in a very large painting contracting company. About 50 employees and about 150 subcontractors available, and often put to work. Now, during that whole time, I met a lot of them, ran into a lot of them, and there were some who were really good at what they do, really good at what they do. Been doing it all their lives, maybe 35, 40 years, 45 years. Then I ran into a guy named Steve one day, a couple days in a row. He was in both commercial and residential. Residential was a college dorm. A couple of college dorms doing all the rooms. And then also at a warehouse, an under construction warehouse. So that was industrial. Okay. Steve was the best I'd ever seen. Everybody else in the company who I mentioned Steve to agreed. It was the best they'd ever seen. Steve was really amazing with a paintbrush on a wall, ceiling, wherever. Window frame, door frame, whatever. Anyway, Steve was amazing. It was hard to not watch how fast and accurate he was. He could get a brush to do anything in any situation with any paint quickly and casually, practically without looking, it seemed. Anyway, I asked him how he got like that. He was a very friendly guy. He didn't mind helping out, giving tips, hints. He didn't criticize. He was a decent guy. And I asked him, how did you get like this? How did you come to paint like this? You're a midlife guy. You're not even, a senior in years here in this business. You're kind of like, 35, 40, maybe 40 years old. He said, well, I learned from a very, very good painter. I was fortunate. I started right out working for this guy. And he showed me how to do it. He showed me how he does it. He just, he showed me the way you see now. He showed me, and I chose to do it like that because that seemed to produce a very good result. Obviously with practice, and I just kept doing it like that every time. That's how I've never done it any other way. I just kept doing that. All right, there's my analogy. Okay. Now, if you're developing and managing, actively executing, practicing your own personal involvement regime, making it up as you go, maybe. Probably it's a good idea for you to consider doing things the same way, following the same rules, the same formulas, doing things in similar or analogous sequences, applying the same principles, applying the same background information, conceptual and practical knowledge, always just keeping it the same thing. No matter what more complex situations you run into or how rapidly things get applied, the same stuff going on all the time. Okay? Same basics. Like Steve would be doing with a brush. There were basic things. You could break down his whole technique if you wanted to, probably in various different ways from different points of view, but you're going to find that he approaches things using the same basic building blocks of using a brush or a roller, but largely this was brush work that I'm talking about. Excuse me. And just keeping doing those all the time and in different kinds of situations, like between a lattice work window frame and a corner or an edge at the top of a wall corner, where the wall meets the ceiling, but there's a thin molding strip there that maybe has a couple different angles to it. You need to wrap your brush around all of that and get it all just done. Putting paint everywhere where it's supposed to be and nowhere where it's not supposed to be. Beautiful straight lines. Pretty much just all in one stroke for a fair distance. This requires a lot of thought to go into it. Exactly how do you do that? How do you load your brush? How much paint? On and on, right? Exactly how to start your stroke, how to continue it in a smooth motion and get all of those angles filled in evenly. All right. And where your stroke stops and the next one starts, it's seamless. Okay? All in one motion. Similarly here, you're going to want to, what my point of that last part was, Steve would use, you watch how he does it in each different kind of a situation or repetitively in almost the same situations or state of affairs. You find the same fundamentals of handling a brush at work, the same mindset about it. Okay. And that's because he's repeated this over and over. But he was given a way to do it by somebody who had worked this out. Not that it's the only way that it could be done, exactly. But this is the way, this was a good way to go about it. One that's going to produce the desired result, the most efficiently arrived at result of the best quality, also workmanship, professionalism, the whole thing, aesthetics, functionality. Right. He was given that. And then he chose that that's the one he's going to do. It's the one he's going to work on. He didn't have any better option. He wasn't going to come up with one right away. This saved him a lot of time. So, it's quite a natural selection to go ahead and select that way of doing things. And second, then, just always doing it like that. No matter what new situations arise, what new kinds of surfaces come out, with respect to building products, no matter what kind of paint it is, no matter what the temperature is, etc. Just bend things a little bit, but it's always the same things, the same basic things being employed. He was given this, and then he selected that because he didn't have a better way. He needed to be shown something, and it happened to be shown to him by somebody who knew what the hell they were doing and was able to explain this and willing to explain this and show it openly. Number two then was just doing that, no matter what else arises. It's just going to be variations of the same kinds of situations. And the approach is going to use the same building blocks of approach. All right. Got my point, I hope. Now, this is the thing here with running your own, pulling together your own personal evolvement regime. You're going to want to be doing it like what Steve did with coming to be a painter, like he is a painter today. You're going to want a formula and a set of rules that are always at work, or that you should be following, where applicable, but how things really work. And do them, just always have them be the building blocks of whatever you're doing in your regime at any point, at any and all points. Excuse me, and just keep doing it that way, developing. You can recombine things. You can develop new techniques that go with the ones that you've already been doing, and so forth, but using the same principles, the same rules, the same formulas, the same structures. Okay. But you need to have got those, or got that, from somewhere that's pretty good, right? Otherwise, you're going to have to. How do you keep doing them the same way? How do you keep doing things the same way if you're always searching for a better way yourself? If you're always trying to find out how to do that, which thing to put first? What are there certain rules, guidelines for how to figure out the answers to those questions? Well, wouldn't it be helpful if you knew them up front? How do you get to knowing this stuff on your own? Unless you go through all of that by trial and error, and slowly turning it into educated guesses, and then more certainties, and then go back and rearrange everything to fit every time you have a development in your idea about how to go all about it, to even just put it together, let alone the contents of that stuff after having been put together being how to go about it at another level. This is a lot of trial and error, and let me tell you, it can mess you up in your whole endeavor. It can really stall things. You can get distracted by things. You can get attracted to certain things and just become fascinated with those and decide, well, I'll just improve at this and improve at this and improve at this. This one thing here, this one little piece, right? And you kind of get obsessed with it. You want to, on and on go the list of reasons why this can screw things up. And once you get to a certain point, and certain of these things, due to their nature, due to what they involve, a lot of development of mental faculties, if the rules, if you keep changing the rules, and you keep trying different things, different ways, totally different approaches, different mindsets. In other words, you don't stick with one overall plan that has specific details about it, how this is done. If you don't stick with one, and you keep switching around, I know this, it can become harmful to you once you get to a certain point, How many times can your mind take being completely redirected in managing its own development? That becomes undevelopment, de-development. It can wear you down. It can make you lose interest. It can do a lot of harm. I mean, it can really take your energy away. You're using your mind. You're using this involvement of the self by the self. Development of mental faculties by the use of your mental faculties. And all that it takes to accomplish that is gets involved, right? Everything mental, physical. You keep giving it differing instructions. You're following along on a certain way of going about things with a certain background, set of background knowledge bits and bytes. And then you switch it up. Well, that wasn't good enough, or that's not the one, or whatever. Or just because you can't stick with anything for very long. You can mess yourself up. You can become destructive rather than constructive. So which one do you do? How do you come up with it? You'd have to learn the whole bit by trial and error and a lot of research and a lot of trying things out to come up with something for yourself to stick with. But will you get there safely? Will you get there at all? Safely or not? So what do you do? Well, you have a couple options. You can take the risk. You can take the chance, let's say. You'll just come up with something right offhand without knowing even what's really involved at all. How many things should be accounted for? Any of that. And start out with something, right? Figure out how you're going to do that, one thing, and start doing it repetitively. Don't change it. And when you come up with something else, not something to replace what you're already doing, but something to add. You add that in, and you never change the way you do it. But at some point, you're going to come along. You're going to come up with this notion that, hey, wait, there's some principle behind both of these things that I'm doing differently, but I'm sticking with consistently with these two different ways of going about a certain thing, right? Seem to be right at the moment that I come up with each of these things to do. Here's how I'll do that. Here's how I'll do this. But they have a similar principle involved now. I can see that now because I'm seeing a pattern. Let's say you've got 3 things there. Well, you can see a pattern now. Oh, well, there must be some principle, right? But applying this other principle now that you see underlying them all, you see that you have to tweak a bit to improve upon that, taking the best from each of these 3, put those together. Now you have different ways of doing all 3. So there you've had to make a change anyway. At some point, you're going to realize that just going about it like that was not the most efficient or productive way to go about it. So what else can you do? What's another option? Well, you can find a channel like this on YouTube. Then you can go through all the material before you apply any of it until you get the whole picture. Or look for the videos that give general instruction, like here are the fundamentals of the whole thing. And look at those, get familiar with those, and begin to apply them to specific things. But then here on this channel, you're going to cherry pick the things you want to apply those things to, those basic guidelines to. If you even have looked at the guidelines first, the general rules, the general guidelines, the general formulas that show up over and over. If you even found those videos and looked at them first and learned the material, that's a lot to learn all at once. So that's probably not the most efficient way to do it, but it's a step better than that first way, which really just amounted to trial and error, gone about systematically. But it's still trial and error. What else is there? Well, you find somebody, personally, direct contact, even if it's long distance, just, a person who can explain it to you, tell it to you, in fact, give you a sequence. And that person might say, you need to really follow this sequence, because if you mix in others, that's going to throw it all out of whack. And this is what you keep repeating over and over in more difficult and complex applications. More and more complex forms of these things. But these are the building blocks, these are the rules. And now I'll guide you through how to, there's also a how to put those things together. There's also another set of how-tos for evolving these things for yourself without somebody else at some point in your life coming to be able to do that. And then there are basics behind all of those three how-tos. But this person is going to be able to give you a path through that in a systematic and logical fashion that works efficiently. Well, then that's coming upon a rare person who can do that. That's more rare than finding somebody in the painting industry, the residential, commercial, and industrial painting business, who's going to be able to do that for you about just doing that, the painting with a brush. And let alone willing to do that, and actually will do that, does that. Because in that business, people like to keep their painting tips and tricks to themselves for some reason. It's kind of a very egotistical thing. It's dirty work. It's the most difficult and dirty work involved in any of the trades, building trades. It's probably the lowest paid and the most dirty work. It's the trade, that is. So, people's tips and tricks and their seniority in a company, and maybe there are a couple of raises they've got, have been hard won. And they had to figure stuff out for themselves, and they're probably not very likely to help out somebody new. Nah. They want you to take as much time as it took them. They don't want you getting better and getting raises that may match theirs after they've been doing this for 20 years for the same boss they don't like. Here you coming along and they teach you everything, and next thing you know, you're better than they are. You're a miracle. Well, they're not going to want to stand around and watch that happen. They'd like their own raises again. Okay, so but to find somebody who can do this for you from the start, our line of talk here, our line of action, is going to be rarer than in the painting business, which was our analogy. So there's another comparison or contrast among the two. Pretty good analogy for this. So how do you do that? How do you find such a person? Well, if you know somebody who has such a channel, and the person is able to also do this more direct contact, one-on-one kind of thing, personalized instruction, and you want to get this done, you want the shortcut, well, then that would be it. Even in shortcuts, you have to go on some certain road. So, you want to keep doing the shortcut. You want to keep at it. You want to get good at that and not confuse yourself, wear yourself out, well, then keep taking that same shortcut. Don't get off track. Don't put the cart before the horse at any point. Stick to that plan and apply the same principles and rules and methods, even if that person's on vacation for 2 years. Just stick to that. That's how you're going to find a good how-to. A person to give a good person to give you the good how-to get started. But then you just keep doing that. Okay? At some point, you have to trust somebody else because you're not going to come up with all of this. The whole picture working consistently and coherently, all on your own from scratch. Not. So you find somebody else. If their description or what you see, what you know of that person's instruction along these lines works pretty good, best you've ever found, rings intuitively true, seems to make sense, the person's not out to get something back from you, you're not going to have to pay later, some hidden expense, some personal agenda, setting you up for a downfall, nothing like that. Well, then you found a rare person, and it's a good idea to go ahead and select. You select. You choose that way to go about it because it saves you a lot of time, circumvents a lot of destructive endeavors along the way, potentially destructive, inhibiting, just time-consuming in your life. Not really getting much done. A lot of effort being put in various modes of effort. Then you choose it. Not just following somebody else. Go ahead, you choose it. I mean, that puts the word you in there. It's yours now. You could have chosen something different. No matter what, you're making a choice. And then you do it. And you keep doing it like that. This doesn't mean that you can't think for yourself. What about that guy Steve, the painter? He kept doing it the way he was shown. Ever since he was shown. Would you say that he was just an automaton, just being controlled and directed by this other person who showed it to him and he couldn't even think for himself? It doesn't show that. Maybe he can't think for himself, but that's a different matter. Not thinking for himself is not the only, factor not the only potential cause here that could be the one applying to Steve here and none other. No, chances are he can think very well for himself, and he thought well enough to do what he did. He made the selection of what he was shown. He chose that as the thing to do over and over and over and over and over. And then he did that. He chose to do that. He just, every day he had an option. He had options. He could do just like he did it yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, all the way back to what he was shown and did the first time upon being shown. Or, he could have chosen something different. Like, well, I think I can make this better. He was very good in deciding every day, every time he got the brush in his hand, deciding that he is going to do something better today. It's going to be the same thing he did yesterday. It doesn't take long for it to no longer be, this is what I was shown, so I'm going to do it again today. I'm going to do what I was shown again today. It doesn't take long for that what I was shown by somebody else to drop off and become the way I do it. I'm going to do it the way I do it again today. All right? Now, what's the main point here? Don't go switching up your methods and your techniques. Follow some different set of rules. Follow some new set of formulas that changes all your basics. Don't do that. Not with this. Not with this stuff. Not with this stuff. Get your basics together, your basic rules, formulas, whatever is, principles of operation. laws of operation and so forth, and the methods that are built out of them, the how-tos at all their levels for the whole thing. Get that together and then stick with it in all circumstances of your development. And to get that, somebody has to tell you and show you and get that across to you through practice, but in a way such that you're never doing something that requires more advancement in your knowledge and methods than you're currently at. Right? So that you're always building your knowledge and your methods and your results together, harmoniously. And just do that. Keep sticking with it. Don't switch up. If you hear of things that are going to come in this training later, and then you insert them now because you just can't wait, you're screwing up. You're getting out of sequence. And if you start mixing in other ways of going about things, you're screwing up. And it can be dangerous. It can be damaging. It can be. You might have to fix stuff with new patterns that you come up with just for that situation. Apply the same rules again, but who wants to have to clean up their mess in their minds? Every other time they move to a next step, just to be able to move on to the next step. That, things that they have caused to have happen, when the whole purpose of the whole thing is to clean up the mental mess. The big one, the general one. So why make more small messes along the way? I mean, that can really screw things up. Yeah, okay, I think I've made my points. So did you like the video? Give it a thumb up. Didn't you like it? Give it your other thumb up. Don't give it your middle finger. Share the joy of the channel with others. Subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell feature. Remember, you heard it right here in Tharanki Ramajaraka. Thank you for selecting this video on choosing a good method and sticking with it with respect to self-mastery evolvement managed by you, for you. I'm Turk Strawman. Be well.